It was just after midnight, that heavy kind of quiet that wraps around you when the whole world seems asleep. I was curled up on the couch in one of Liam's old hoodies, a half-finished mug of chamomile tea going cold in my hands. He'd said he was exhausted, that he was heading to bed early. No goodnight kiss, no warmth in his voice, just tired. But something about the way he brushed me off kept replaying in my head. So I did what anyone might do when their gut won't settle. I grabbed my phone and hit his name. No plan, no suspicion, just a need to hear him. The phone rang once, just once. Then his voice came through, low, groggy, like I'd woken him up. Hey, babe. Olivia? My name isn't Olivia. The room didn't spin. It snapped into stillness. My body froze. My grip tightened on the phone, like holding it any tighter would rewind what I just heard. Excuse me? I managed, my voice sharp and shaking. Then I heard her. Another woman. Awake. Very awake. Did you just say my name? She asked, confused, maybe even hurt. I didn't hang up. I couldn't. I sat there in the dark, listening to the panic unravel on the other end. The shuffle of sheets, Liam's voice tripping over itself, trying to come up with a lie fast enough to cover the truth already laid bare. Olivia wasn't a stranger. She was there, in bed with him. And I was the idiot on the other end of the line, holding my breath, trying not to let him hear the crack in my chest. I didn't cry. Not yet. I listened, quiet, alert, like the calm before something I couldn't quite name. I don't know how long I sat there, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the mess he created unravel in real time. He kept saying her name, then mine, then backtracking like he could somehow unsay the thing that ruined everything. Olivia kept asking questions, short, sharp, angry. And all I did was sit there in the dark, completely still, like if I moved, the pain would finally hit me full force. But it didn't. Not yet. What I felt instead was a strange, eerie calm, the kind you only get in the middle of a storm you saw coming. I ended the call without a word. Not because I was afraid to speak, but because I knew that if I started, I wouldn't stop. I'd scream. I'd cry. I'd ask him why. And he didn't deserve any of that. Not yet. Not when I could feel something colder rising in me, something sharper than heartbreak. Betrayal. That familiar gut-wrenching twist of realizing someone you trusted just tore the ground out from beneath you. But even as my fingers trembled, my mind was already moving faster than my emotions. If he thought that was the end of it, he didn't know me at all. I walked to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. My reflection didn't look broken. It looked alert, focused, like a woman who'd just woken up from a dream and stepped straight into the reality she always feared was waiting. I wiped my face, even though there were no tears yet. My voice had returned, but not for him. Not tonight. He had no idea what he'd started by answering that call. And I had no idea that one midnight slip would change everything. Not just for me, but for him too. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling like it held the answers. Every time I blinked, I heard it again. His voice, soft and stupid, calling me by another woman's name. I replayed the gasp, the confusion, the way the sheets rustled as he scrambled to cover the truth. And somewhere between midnight and dawn, something shifted in me. I stopped wondering why. I stopped imagining how long it had been going on. I just started thinking about what came next. Because here's the thing, he made the mistake, but I had the control now. He didn't know what I'd heard. He didn't know I stayed on the line. And he definitely didn't know what I was capable of when I stopped trying to keep the peace. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry in front of him. I was going to wait, watch. And then, I'd let the truth speak for itself in a way he'd never see coming. So when my phone lit up at 8 a.m. with a good morning text from him, pretending nothing had happened, I smiled. Not because I was okay, not because I forgave him, but because I finally knew exactly who I was dealing with, and I wasn't about to waste another second pretending I didn't. What he gave me wasn't just pain, it was power, and I planned to use every ounce of it. I didn't confront him, not right away. That would have been too easy, for him. He would have fumbled through apologies, cried maybe, promised it wasn't serious, or just a mistake. I didn't want words. I wanted evidence. I wanted the whole picture, ugly, raw, undeniable. So I went quiet. Played the part, smiled when he called, sent heart emojis, told him I missed him too. And while he thought he was getting away with it, I was already digging into the wreckage he left behind. First came the phone records. Nothing dramatic, just a few clicks, a password he once gave me when he was too lazy to reset it. There she was, Olivia. Over and over, late-night calls, mid-afternoon check-ins, hours of whispered nothing. Then came the bank statements. He'd said he was tight on money lately, but apparently, he had just enough for dinners, flowers, and 2 plane tickets to Miami. The same weekend, he told me he was on a work trip in Chicago. My hands trembled as I scrolled, but my face stayed stone still. I didn't cry. I copied every transaction. But it didn't stop there. I searched social media. Not hers. She was too smart for that. His. Buried in tagged photos and memories were little clues. The corner of her coat in a group selfie, the reflection of her laugh in a wine glass. I zoomed in, again and again, until I could practically hear her voice in the pictures. And the more I found, the less it hurt. Because I was no longer the abandoned girlfriend. I was the woman who knew. The woman who was planning. The storm he never saw coming was already gathering right behind my smile. The worst part wasn't the lies. It was how easily he told them. The little details I once found charming, his ability to spin a story, to talk his way out of anything, now felt poisonous. Every, "I'm swamped with meetings," or "I'll call you later, babe," echoed in my mind with a new meaning. I saw the way he layered truth with fiction, just enough to make it believable. And I hated that I'd once believed it. But that hate? It was fuel. Every excuse he gave me was now ammunition I'd stack carefully, precisely. I wasn't collecting receipts. I was building a case. The more I learned, the clearer his second life became. He hadn't just cheated. He had rewritten me into something disposable. He told Olivia I was his ex. A crazy one who won't move out. That part almost made me laugh, bitter and sharp. While I was folding his laundry and covering his rent during rough patches, he was out there painting me as some clingy ghost he couldn't shake. I wasn't even heartbroken anymore. I was insulted. And if there's one thing I don't let slide, it's being underestimated. Still, I said nothing. Every time we spoke, I played my role like a professional. Sweet, soft, predictable. And he bought it, because of course he did. Men like Liam count on women like me not knowing their worth. But the truth was, the silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy. He didn't know I'd already circled the date in red, the perfect opportunity, the perfect audience. And if he thought I'd go down quietly, he was about to learn how wrong a man can be. When he mentioned the wedding, his cousins, I almost laughed out loud. "It would mean a lot if you came," he said, like nothing had changed. Like we were still us. I played it cool, tilted my head, smiled through the phone, and said, "Of course, babe. I wouldn't miss it." He had no idea I already knew. No clue that while he was planning outfits and speeches, I was planning something else entirely. I wasn't just coming to that wedding. I was choosing it as the stage. But before I made my move, I needed one last piece. Olivia. I knew her name, her voice, her number. I just hadn't used it. until now. I texted her, calm and clear. "We need to talk. You've been lied to, just like I was." I expected her to ignore me, maybe lash out. Instead, she responded in minutes. At first, defensive, then curious, then furious. And once I sent the proof, screenshots, call logs, bank charges, her silence said it all. We were on the same side now. Not friends, but allies. Hurt in different ways by the same man. We made a plan, a quiet one. No screaming, no catfights, no drama. Just the truth, delivered exactly where it would hurt most. In front of everyone he lied to. He thought he'd built two separate lives. But we were about to bring both crashing down into one unforgettable moment. All I had to do was wait, smile, and act like I didn't already see the ending. And the best part? He'd be the only one in the room who didn't know what was coming. I showed up in a navy dress I knew he loved, back when his compliments still felt real. My hair was curled just the way he used to request it, my smile sweet, effortless. I looked like the perfect girlfriend, and that was exactly the point. The rehearsal dinner was held at some rustic vineyard, strung with fairy lights and filled with the kind of people who say things like, "Family means everything." Fitting, really, since everything was about to fall apart, right there in front of his entire family. Liam greeted me with a kiss on the cheek and that smug little sparkle in his eye. He thought he'd gotten away with it, that I had no idea what he whispered in the dark. He walked me around the room like a trophy, introducing me to aunts and cousins I didn't care to remember. I nodded, smiled, asked about wedding details like I wasn't seconds away from dropping a bomb on his whole carefully managed lie. Meanwhile, I kept scanning the room, waiting for Olivia. She wasn't late. She was intentional. When she arrived, she slipped in quietly, dressed in cream, not to blend in, but to glow under the string lights like truth walking into a room full of lies. She made her way to me slowly, as planned, not acknowledging Liam just yet. No one suspected a thing. The photographers clicked away. People sipped their wine, laughing, clinking glasses. I could feel the tension building in my chest, tight, hot. But I held it down with a single thought. Almost time. He didn't even see her at first. That's what made it so perfect. He was too busy soaking in the attention, talking about how tight-knit his family was, how proud he was to stand beside his cousin on such a special weekend. I nodded along, like I hadn't spent weeks dissecting every lie he'd told. I watched him hold a glass of champagne like nothing in the world could touch him. But then, he caught her. Across the room, Olivia, standing still, watching him. His face changed in an instant, his eyes widened just enough. His lips parted like he wanted to say something but couldn't remember what words meant. He didn't know whether to be shocked, scared, or guilty. And that pause, that moment of stammering recognition, was worth everything. I stepped away before he could react, before he could pull me aside and ask, "What's going on?" Because the beauty of it was, he wasn't in control anymore. We were. The toasts began. The lights dimmed slightly, and the clinking of forks against glasses quieted the chatter. Liam's cousin gave a speech, then his mother, then someone called my name. I stood up slowly, pretending to be flustered and flattered, smiling like the woman who still believed in fairy tales. But inside, my heart was steel. Every breath was measured. Every word I was about to speak had been rehearsed, not in front of a mirror, but in the moments I stayed silent while piecing together the truth. This wasn't just a toast. This was the match against the fuse. I held the glass delicately in my hand and raised it with a soft smile. "To love," I began, my voice calm, warm, practiced. "To honesty, and to knowing when it's time to say goodbye." There was a soft ripple of polite laughter, the kind you hear when people don't really understand the joke, but don't want to seem rude. Liam chuckled nervously beside me. That's when I turned to him. Just him. and let the rest of the room disappear for a moment. To Liam, I said. For telling me he was asleep, alone, while Olivia lay right next to him. The room cracked. Silence dropped like a stone. Glasses froze mid-air. Somewhere, a fork clattered onto a plate. And there he was, staring at me, wide-eyed, jaw slack, caught like a man with no exits. I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. And then, right on cue, Olivia stepped forward and stood by my side. We didn't need to shout. We didn't even need to explain. We just placed the printed screenshots, texts, call logs, receipts, on the table in front of him. People leaned forward, eyes darting from the papers to our faces, then to Liam. He looked small, cornered, like he suddenly realized this wasn't just a bad dream. It was the consequence of every careless lie he thought would stay buried. And it wasn't over yet. You could hear a pin drop. The room was so still, it felt like everyone forgot how to breathe. Liam looked around, desperate for someone, anyone to save him. His face flushed red, then pale, then something in between. He tried to speak, but no sound came out. Just that twitch in his jaw and the widening panic in his eyes. I almost pitied him. Almost. But then I remembered every lie he told while I sat alone waiting for calls he never intended to make. Olivia didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Her presence said everything. And when she looked at him, there was no softness left. Just that clear, sharp ache of betrayal. The kind you can't fake or rehearse. I watched his gaze bounce between us, trying to piece together how long we'd known, how much we'd shared. The answer was simple. Enough. Enough to see through him. Enough to burn down the story he tried so hard to control. And then, calmly, without drama, I placed my glass down and turned to leave. Olivia followed, her heels echoing softly against the wooden floor. We didn't look back. We didn't have to. The whispers behind us grew louder, frantic, stunned. A wave of gasps and half-formed questions swept through the crowd. But I felt weightless, like something had finally been lifted from me, like I wasn't the one carrying the shame anymore. He was, and he could keep it. The night air hit my face like a baptism, cool, crisp, clean. I could still hear the murmurs behind us through the open doors, the clicking of phones, the quiet unraveling of his reputation in real time. But I didn't stop walking. Not once. Neither did Olivia. We didn't speak, not yet. There was a quiet understanding between us, a shared ache, a strange kind of solidarity born out of betrayal. Two women who were never meant to meet, but now couldn't unknow the truth that tied them together. When we reached the edge of the vineyard, she finally broke the silence. "That was brutal," she said, her voice low. I glanced at her, and for the first time, really looked. She didn't look like the enemy. She looked like me, a woman who had trusted the wrong man, given her time, her tenderness, her body to someone who used it all carelessly. I nodded. "It had to be," I replied. "Otherwise, he'd just keep doing it." We sat on a wooden bench near the parking lot, letting the night breathe around us. Olivia pulled out a cigarette but didn't light it. I think she just needed something to hold. I watched her exhale without smoke. We didn't talk about Liam anymore. There was no point. He'd already lost us. What lingered now wasn't about him. It was about reclaiming the pieces we'd given away so freely. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't alone. As we sat there under the vineyard lights, I realized how different this ending felt. No screaming match, no begging or bargaining. Just truth, laid bare in front of everyone who mattered to him. Liam had always counted on silence. Mine. Hers. He thrived in the gaps between what we didn't know and what we were too afraid to say. But now, that silence was broken. And in its place was something far more powerful. Choice. Our choice. Olivia eventually stood, brushing off her dress and glancing at me with a small, exhausted smile. "I'm done," she said. "With him, with all of it." I nodded. "Me too." We exchanged numbers, not because we wanted to be friends, but because we'd walked through fire side by side. That kind of experience doesn't always make you close, but it does leave a mark. And even though I didn't know if we'd ever speak again, I was grateful she didn't run. She stood beside me when it mattered most. That's not something you forget. As she drove off, I sat in my car a little longer, staring at the venue glowing behind me. Somewhere inside, he was still trying to make sense of what had just happened, still scrambling, still denying. But none of that mattered now. I wasn't there to hear it. I wasn't there to clean it up. I had already taken the first step away. And deep down, I knew the best part was still ahead. The days after weren't quiet. They were free. I expected some kind of emotional crash, but it never came. What I felt instead was clarity. A new kind of peace I hadn't realized I'd been craving. Liam tried to call, of course. Left long, rambling voicemails. Apologies layered with excuses. Blame wrapped in desperation. I didn't listen past the first 5 seconds. His number went straight to blocked. My locks changed the same day. There would be no dramatic goodbye, no second chances, just silence. My silence. People started to find out. Word spread, through family, friends, even mutual acquaintances who suddenly remembered seeing a blonde with him in photos, at dinners. On weekends, I wasn't invited. And just like that, the illusion he built came crashing down. Not because I exposed him in anger, but because I told the truth. Once, and loud enough. I didn't need to ruin him. His own behavior did that for me. And that? That felt better than any revenge I could have planned. I began filling my time with things that had nothing to do with him. Morning walks, fresh coffee from the little place down the street he used to call too expensive. Long baths with jazz playing low in the background. For the first time in what felt like years, I was choosing myself without guilt. And every simple moment became a quiet celebration. He had taken enough from me. I wasn't about to let him take the healing too. I started deleting things, photos, videos, texts. Not in a fit of rage, but deliberately, carefully. Each swipe felt like shedding old skin. There was one picture I hesitated on, though. It was from a weekend trip to the lake. His arms around me, both of us laughing, wind tangled in my hair. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I missed him, but because I missed the version of me who still believed him. The woman in that photo looked happy. But she didn't know. She didn't know she was being lied to. And I don't envy her anymore. I tapped delete. It felt like closing a chapter, not slamming it shut, just turning the page, finally, with both hands. I wasn't bitter. I was awake. There's a difference. I stopped checking his social media, stopped wondering what he was telling people. None of it mattered now. Because every day I woke up without that knot in my chest, I remembered that I had done something most people never do. I walked away with my dignity intact, and I never looked back. One night, I poured myself a glass of wine, lit a candle, and opened a browser tab. I booked a solo trip. Somewhere far. Somewhere beautiful. A place I'd always said I wanted to go but never did because he didn't like long flights. That night, I chose a window seat. Just for me. No baggage, no shadows. Just the kind of peace you can only find after walking through fire and realizing you didn't burn. You became the flame. The day of the flight, I stood in front of my mirror one last time. No mascara streaks, no fake smile, just me, clear-eyed, unapologetic. I zipped my suitcase, grabbed my passport, and left the key to our old place, my old place, on the counter. I didn't need a dramatic goodbye. The absence of noise said everything. He would come home one day to find the void I left behind, and that silence would echo louder than any fight we ever had. At the airport, I didn't cry. I didn't look back. I just moved forward, step by step, past couples, families, announcements blaring over the speakers. I felt like a woman reborn. The kind of woman who knows that sometimes closure doesn't come in the form of an apology, but in reclaiming your own narrative. I boarded that plane not as the woman who got left behind, but as the woman who decided she was done staying behind. As the wheels lifted off the runway and the city grew smaller beneath me, I leaned back in my seat, smiled to myself, and whispered under my breath. He said her name by mistake, but mine will be the one he never forgets.
She gets nothing. Dad cut her out of the will completely. My sister declared the moment I walked into the room. Around the table, our relatives exchanged smug glances, convinced I'd been erased from the family legacy. My son Eli squeezed my hand, calm and quiet. What they didn't know. 3 months ago, my father gave Eli something in secret, something that would turn their perfect inheritance upside down. I could feel their eyes on me the moment I stepped into the law office. Like vultures studying wounded prey, calculating how long before they could feast. My sister Karen sat at the head of the mahogany table, a position she claimed as her birthright long before our father was even cold in the ground. Her steel gray pantsuit matched her expression, sharp, unforgiving, meticulously crafted for this moment of triumph. They didn't even wait for the lawyer to speak, she announced, voice carrying across the room with practiced precision. She will get nothing. Dad hated her. The words landed like a physical blow. 8 years of estrangement condensed into one cruel sentence, delivered with the calm certainty of someone reading from a script they'd rehearsed for years. I tightened my grip on Ella's small hand. My 10-year-old son squeezed back, his warm fingers curling around mine. His eyes, so much like my father's it sometimes hurt to look at them, scanned the room with an unnerving calm that belied his age. My Uncle Rick let out a dry laugh from his corner throne, a half-chewed cigar dangling from his lips. Even her kid knows she's worthless, he muttered, nodding toward Eli like he wasn't even human. I guided Eli to the farthest empty chair, away from the pack of relatives who'd long since chosen sides in a war I never wanted to fight. The leather seat creaked beneath me, announcing my presence to a room that would have preferred I remain a ghost. Karen turned her head slowly, red lips curving into a smile devoid of warmth. You know this is pointless, right? Dad rewrote the will, cut you out completely, said you were dead to him. I didn't respond. Couldn't. The weight of 8 years pressed against my chest like a stone. Why had I come? Some foolish hope that death might have softened my father's heart, that he might have left me a word, a line, some small acknowledgement that I had once been his daughter. Instead, I found myself exactly where I'd been 8 years ago, surrounded by people who had buried me in their hearts long before they buried him. Just as I was gathering the fragments of my dignity to leave, the door opened. Mr. Connor, my father's lawyer for 30 years, entered with a thick leather portfolio tucked under his arm. His face betrayed nothing as he took his place at the table. The room fell silent, everyone straightening like soldiers at inspection. This was it. The formal confirmation of what Karen had already pronounced. I was nothing, would receive nothing, meant nothing, or so I thought. What no one in that room knew, not Karen with her victory smirk, not Rick with his contemptuous cigar chomping, not even me with my carefully contained grief, was that my son Eli had brought something with him, something that would unravel everything they thought they knew. You forgot the video he recorded, Eli said, his voice cutting through the room's tension like a silver bell. It had been 8 years since I'd walked away from my family, not by choice, but by necessity, because sometimes survival means leaving behind the people who are supposed to love you most. My crime, in my father's eyes, was simple. I had chosen myself and my son over the life he had planned for me. When my marriage to David, the son of my father's business partner, the perfect match he had practically arranged, became a prison of quiet desperation and controlled cruelty, I left. Marriage isn't supposed to be easy. My father had said when I first came to him, bruises carefully hidden beneath long sleeves. The Thomases don't quit. We endure. But endurance has limits, and mine came the night David threw a glass that shattered inches from 2-year-old Ailey's head. I packed a single suitcase, took my son, and appeared on my father's doorstep, hoping for shelter until I could find my footing. He looked at me, at Eli clutching his stuffed rabbit, and closed the door without a word. Karen was there that night, watching from the window. She called the next day, voice dripping with false concern. "Dad's just upset. Give him time. Meanwhile, you should go back to David. He called here looking for you, says it was all a misunderstanding." I hung up and never called back. Uncle Rick spread the word through the family. Julia had abandoned her husband, disgraced the family name. My cousins, aunts, uncles, people who had known me since birth, closed ranks. None of them asked why. None of them wanted to know. It was easier to believe I was selfish, unstable, ungrateful. So I built a new life, a small apartment, a job teaching art at a community center, and a peaceful home where Eli could grow without walking on eggshells. We didn't have much, but we had safety, laughter, and each other. I thought I'd made peace with my exile until the funeral invitation arrived 3 weeks ago. A formal black-bordered card with my name correctly spelled, proof it wasn't a clerical error. I stared at it for hours, the small acknowledgement of my existence after years of silence. "We should go," Eli had said, watching me from the doorway of our kitchen. "For closure." Closure. Such a grown-up word from a child who had never known his grandfather beyond photographs and fragments of stories I shared on good days. "There won't be closure, Eli," I'd said softly. "Just more hurt." He'd looked at me with those eyes, my father's eyes, wise beyond their years. Sometimes hurt is part of healing. Where did he get such wisdom? Not from me, certainly not from my family. Perhaps children who grow up watching their parents struggle develop a kind of emotional intelligence the rest of us spend lifetimes seeking. So we went to the funeral. We stood at the back of the church. I watched Karen deliver a eulogy full of carefully curated memories, portraying a father I barely recognized, warm, supportive, devoted. Uncle Rick placed a hand on her shoulder as she described how Charles Thomas had always put family first. I didn't cry. I had mourned my father years ago when he chose pride over love. After the service, I approached the casket alone. Eli waited respectfully at a distance, understanding instinctively that this moment needed privacy. "Goodbye, Dad," I whispered, placing my hand on the polished wood. "I wish things had been different." Karen spotted me as I turned to leave. Her eyes narrowed, calculating. "The will reading is Tuesday," she said, voice pitched low. 3 o'clock at Connor's office. A pause then, "Not that you want to bother." I should have recognized the trap in her invitation. The gleam in her eye should have warned me. But some small, foolish part of me wondered if perhaps my father had left me a message, some acknowledgement, maybe even an apology. So here we were, 3 days later, stepping into the final act of a play where everyone seemed to know their lines except me. Mr. Connor cleared his throat, drawing me back to the present. He adjusted his glasses, flipped open the portfolio, and began reading in the measured cadence of a man who had delivered both fortunes and devastation with equal professionalism for decades. I barely heard the initial legal preamble. My mind was spinning with questions about why I had come, about what Karen knew that made her so confident, about how I would explain to Eli on the drive home that his grandfather had erased us completely. To my daughter Karen, I leave the primary residence and all its contents. Karen's face remained impassive, but her fingers tapped once against the table, a small tell of satisfaction I recognized from childhood. Her husband Neil nodded slightly, like they were already planning renovations. To my brother Richard, the lake property and all remaining shares in the family business. Rick leaned back, chair creaking under his substantial frame, arms folded across his chest like a king surveying newly acquired territory. The cigar shifted between his teeth as he bit down gently. To Paul, my nephew, the vintage car collection. Paul, my cousin who once locked me in a closet for hours just to hear me beg, smirked from across the table. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted copper. The list continued. Pieces of my father's life distributed like carnival prizes to people who had earned them through loyalty rather than love. Each bequest confirmed what Karen had declared. There would be nothing for me. And then came the moment I'd been dreading. And as previously declared, my daughter Julia will not receive. "You forgot the video he recorded." Eli's voice cut through the room like a bell, clear and untroubled. The lawyer's words died mid-sentence. Every head turned toward my son, who sat perfectly straight in his oversized chair. I stared at him, confusion flooding my brain. "What video?" I whispered. But Eli wasn't looking at me. His attention was fixed on Mr. Connor, steady and certain. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a small white envelope, slightly crumpled but sealed tight. My name was written on the front in my father's unmistakable handwriting. Beneath it, "For the lawyer only if it gets ugly." I stared at the envelope in my son's hands like it was radioactive. The room had gone completely still. "Eli, where did you get that?" My voice barely carried. He looked up at me, expression soft but confident. "Grandpa gave it to me when we visited him. He told me to keep it safe." My heart stuttered. He gave it to you." Eli nodded. "The day we visited him, just me and him. You were at work." The memory clicked into place. 3 months ago, Eli had asked if he could go with our neighbor, Mrs. Sandoval, to drop off a painting at my father's house. She had called out of the blue, saying she had commissioned a landscape of the old family lake house and thought my father might want it. I'd hesitated, but Eli had been so eager. It was the first time I'd let him go without me. I had no idea they'd even spoken. Mr. Connor reached across the table. "May I?" he asked gently. Eli handed the envelope over without hesitation. The entire room leaned forward as Connor opened it, revealing a USB drive and a folded note in my father's handwriting. The lawyer's composure cracked just slightly as he read the note. He nodded slowly, then looked up at the expectant faces. "There is a video message from Charles Thomas, recorded before the final version of this will," he announced. It was sealed with instructions to be played only if this situation became contentious. Karen scoffed, her perfect mask slipping. "This is ridiculous. He didn't say anything about a video." "We don't know what's on that thing," Rick interjected, voice harder now. "Could be fake." Connor raised a hand. "It's timestamp authenticated. I recognize the handwriting and signature. Per his instructions, I'm legally bound to play it." He plugged the USB into his laptop. The screen flickered to life, revealing a black frame with a single word: "Play." The air in the room changed. No one spoke. No one moved. I gripped the arms of my chair, knuckles white. Connor hit the spacebar. The screen went black for half a second, then flickered, and suddenly there he was, my father. Older, thinner, sitting at his desk wearing the navy sweater I'd sent him for his last birthday, the one I never knew if he'd worn or thrown away. His hands were folded, his expression not cold, just tired. He looked straight into the camera and began to speak. "Hi, Julia." I didn't breathe. "If you're watching this, I'm gone, and I'm guessing things didn't go well at the reading." His hands were clasped in front of him, fingers twitching slightly, a nervous habit I had inherited. "I didn't expect peace between you and the family. I know what they think of you. Hell, I know what I said about you." He looked down, swallowed hard. "And I was wrong." My breath caught in my throat. My nails dug into the armrest. "I believed what Karen told me. I believed Rick. I believed that you left because you didn't care. I didn't ask questions. I didn't listen to you, not once. You tried, and I shut the door in your face. On you and Eli." Karen shifted sharply in her chair. I didn't look at her. I couldn't. I thought being strong meant being proud. That if you walked away, it was betrayal. But strength, his voice cracked, just barely, strength is showing up. It's protecting your child, and you did that. You did what I couldn't. His eyes glistened. My vision blurred. I met Eli one day when he stopped by, just the two of us. That kid. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. He didn't say much. But when I asked him about you, he just said, "My mom is the safest place in the world." My hand flew to my mouth, a sob threatening to break free. "I lost you, Julia. I see that now. I lost my daughter because I couldn't stop being right long enough to love you the way you needed. But I won't let my last act be pushing you away again." He cleared his throat and looked straight into the camera. "So I changed the will." The collective gasp in the room was audible. Karen muttered something under her breath. Rick's chair creaked as he sat forward abruptly. "I've left the house to you and Eli. The savings, the retirement fund, it's yours. And a college trust for Eli." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This couldn't be real. "I know it doesn't fix what I broke, but I want you to have the peace I couldn't give you when I was alive." He paused, then leaned slightly closer to the camera. "And if they're angry, Let them be angry. You earned this. You lived through all of it and never stopped being a mother. That's more than I ever managed. Tears streamed freely down my face now. I made no attempt to hide them. I'm proud of you, and I love you, Julia. Always did. I just didn't know how to show it. And then, just before the video faded to black, he added quietly, "Take care of my grandson. Tell him thank you." The screen went dark. No one spoke. No one moved. The silence was absolute, holy, filled with the wreckage of certainties now destroyed. I sat frozen, tears tracking silently down my cheeks, feeling like something I hadn't known I was carrying had finally been lifted. After all the years of noise, of blame, of exile, he had heard me. He had finally heard me. And in the quiet that followed, no one could take that away. Karen stood abruptly. Her chair screeched against the floor as she snatched up her purse, face drained of color. She walked out without a word, heels clicking a desperate retreat. Neil followed, red-faced and sputtering. Rick remained seated longer, jaw working as if chewing on arguments that suddenly tasted bitter. When he finally stood, he looked at Connor like he wanted to challenge the video's authenticity, but even he knew there was nothing to fight. My father had spoken. His truth was now undeniable. The others followed, filing out in various states of shock and discomfort. Some couldn't meet my eyes. A few offered quiet nods, pity or respect, I couldn't tell. Soon it was just the three of us, me, Eli, and Mr. Connor. The lawyer gently closed his portfolio. "There will be some paperwork," he said, voice softened by what he'd witnessed. "But everything's in order." I nodded, unable to form words. Connor gave a small, genuine smile and left us alone in the room. The silence that followed wasn't the same kind I had grown used to over the years. This silence was peaceful, whole, like something had finally settled into place. I looked at Eli, still holding my hand, still watching me with those eyes that saw everything. "Thank you," I whispered. He tilted his head. "For what?" "For being braver than me," I said. "For holding on to something that mattered when I was ready to let it go." He smiled, my father's smile, without the hardness years of pride had etched into it. "I just wanted you to hear him." And I had, not just in the video, but in the shift that came after, in the peace that filled the room once everyone else had left with their shattered expectations. That's the thing about truth. It doesn't always come when you want it or how you expect it. Sometimes it arrives in the hands of a 10-year-old boy wise enough to know that healing requires honesty and love requires courage. I didn't walk out of that room broken. I walked out holding my son's hand, with my father's words echoing in my heart. I walked out whole, carrying not just an inheritance of property and money, but the far more valuable legacy of knowing that in the end, truth had found its voice. And sometimes that's enough. "Your mother never wanted you to find this," my father said, placing a weathered cedar box in my hands on his deathbed. "But I can't take her secret to my grave." 3 days after his funeral, as my siblings fought over the estate, I finally opened the box and discovered everything I knew about our family was built on a lie. The hospice room smelled of antiseptic and ending. That peculiar scent of medications, flowers trying too hard to mask death's approach, and the lingering coffee my father could no longer stomach. Outside, April rain tapped against the window, providing a gentle rhythm to what we both knew were our final conversations. "There's something I need to give you, Madeline," Dad said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Something your mother made me swear I'd destroy." I leaned closer, taking his papery hand in mine. At 73, he looked ancient, cancer having carved away at him for months until only the essence remained. Those familiar blue eyes, now sunken but still sharp, watching me with an intensity that made my chest tighten. "What is it, Dad?" He gestured weakly toward the small closet. "Top shelf, behind the spare blanket, cedar box." I found it easily, a simple wooden box about the size of a large book, its surface smooth from years of handling. A small brass latch held it closed, no lock. When I brought it to him, he didn't take it. Instead, he motioned for me to sit beside him again. "Your mother never wanted you to find this," he said, his breath rattling slightly. "But I can't take her secret to my grave. I've carried it too long already." "Dad, you're scaring me. What secret?" His fingers trembled as they brushed the box's surface. "She made me promise." 36 years, I kept that promise. But some promises, he paused, gathering strength. Some promises hurt more in the keeping than the breaking. "Is this about Mom? About how she died?" My mother had passed 14 years earlier, a sudden aneurysm that took her in her sleep. One day she was making Sunday dinner for the family, the next morning she was gone. I was 22 then, just starting my career, still calling home twice a week for advice I pretended not to need. No, he shook his head slightly. It's about you, Maddie, about who you are. Before I could ask what he meant, a nurse entered to check his medications. Dad's eyes flicked to the box, then back to me. After I'm gone, he whispered, not before. Promise me. I nodded, tucking the box into my bag, unsettled by the weight of whatever secret it contained. 3 days later, he was gone. The lake house is mine, my brother Derek announced, voice bouncing off the wood-paneled walls of Dad's study. Dad always said it would be. He said no such thing, my sister Vanessa countered, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Why would he leave it to you when you've only visited twice in the last decade? Besides, I've already spoken with Martin about it. Martin Sherman, Dad's lawyer for 30 years, sat at the desk looking increasingly uncomfortable as my siblings circled each other like territorial wolves. He cleared his throat. Perhaps we should wait until everyone is. Why wait? Derek cut in. We all know what's coming. Dad left everything split 3 ways, minus whatever guilt donation he made to that cancer research place. Let's just get the paperwork started. Vanessa rolled her eyes. Always in a rush. Some of us actually want to honor Dad's wishes correctly. I stood by the window, watching raindrops chase each other down the glass. The same rain that had kept Dad company during our last conversation now returned for his funeral. The cedar box sat heavy in my tote bag, untouched since he'd given it to me. I couldn't bring myself to open it while he was still breathing, and the chaos of death arrangements had filled every moment since. Madeline. Martin's voice broke through my thoughts. Are you ready to begin? I turned to find them all staring at me. Martin with patience, my siblings with barely concealed irritation. At 36, I was the youngest, the one who had stayed closest to home. The one who had sat with Dad through chemo sessions while Derek managed his real estate empire in Chicago and Vanessa built her influencer brand in Los Angeles. Yes, sorry. I took a seat on the leather sofa, pulling my cardigan tighter against the chill that seemed to permeate the house despite the spring warmth outside. Martin adjusted his glasses and opened a thick folder. Your father's will is relatively straightforward. The estate is to be divided equally among his 3 children, with the exception of a few specific bequests. Derek made a satisfied noise. Vanessa uncrossed, then recrossed her arms. The lake house property, Martin continued, is designated for Madeline. What? Derek stood abruptly. Martin raised a placating hand. Along with the main residence. That's impossible, Vanessa said, voice brittle. That's over half the estate's value. The financial assets will be divided equally, Martin clarified. The properties, however, were specifically designated. Derek's face flushed crimson. This isn't what Dad wanted. Someone got to him while he was on those pain medications. Was it you, Maddie? Whispering in his ear while we were trying to maintain our lives despite his illness. The accusation stung like a slap. I was taking care of him, Derek. Someone had to. Oh, playing the martyr card, Vanessa sneered. How convenient that your sacrifice resulted in 2 houses. I never asked for anything, I said quietly. You never had to, Derek shouted. You were always Dad's favorite, ever since Mom died. The perfect daughter who could do no wrong. That's not true, isn't it? Look at you, sitting there pretending to be surprised. What did you promise him? That you'd keep the family legacy alive. Live in his precious house? Keep his memory dusted and polished while the rest of us moved on with our lives. The room pulsed with tension. Martin looked like he wanted to melt into the leather chair. There's more, he said hesitantly. Your father left letters for each of you. He handed out 3 sealed envelopes. Mine felt unusually thick compared to my siblings. Derek tore his open immediately, eyes scanning the contents. His expression shifted from anger to confusion. What is this supposed to mean? He demanded, waving the paper. The truth will explain everything. Trust your sister when the time comes. What truth? What time? Vanessa was reading her letter with similar bewilderment. Mine says the same thing. Forgiveness is easier when you understand the whole story. She looked up sharply. Madeline, what did you do? Nothing. I protested. I have no idea what he's talking about. But even as I said it, I felt the weight of the cedar box in my bag, heavy with unspoken truths. Martin cleared his throat. There are some additional documents that need signatures. Perhaps we should continue tomorrow when emotions aren't running quite so high. I'm flying back tonight, Derek said flatly. Whatever game is being played here, I don't have time for it. Have the paperwork sent to my office. Vanessa stood, smoothing her black dress with practiced precision. I agree. We can handle the rest remotely. As they gathered their things, neither looked at me directly. The gulf between us, present for years but carefully navigated during family holidays and occasional phone calls, had suddenly become an unbridgeable canyon. After they left, Martin lingered, concern evident behind his professional demeanor. Your father was of sound mind, Madeline, he said quietly, despite what your siblings might imply. I know that. He also knew this would be difficult. That's why he asked me to give you this. He handed me another envelope, this one unmarked. He said you'd understand when the time was right. When I was finally alone in the silent house, the house where I'd grown up, where Mom had braided my hair before school, where Dad had taught me to change a tire and mix the perfect old-fashioned, I sat on my childhood bed and placed both the envelope and the cedar box before me. Whatever truth lay waiting had been important enough for my dying father to break a decades-long promise. Important enough to risk family harmony from beyond the grave. With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope first. My dearest Madeline, by now you've seen how Derek and Vanessa reacted to the will. I'm sorry to put you in this position, but there was no other way. The box contains what your mother never wanted you to know, but what I believe you deserve to understand. It will help explain my decisions and perhaps, in time, help heal the fractures in our family. The lake house was always meant for you. It was your mother's wish, though for different reasons than mine. She wanted to keep you close to home, to the life we built. I want you to have a safe harbor when the truth creates its inevitable storm. I've loved you from the first moment I held you, and that has never changed. Remember that when you open the box. All my love. Dad, I stared at the letter, confusion and dread building in equal measure. With unsteady hands, I reached for the cedar box, releasing the small brass latch. Inside lay a collection of items carefully arranged, a bundle of letters tied with faded blue ribbon, a small velvet jewelry pouch, a handful of photographs I'd never seen before, and a document folder with official-looking papers. I reached for the photographs first. The top one showed a young woman with long dark hair and familiar eyes. My eyes, standing beside a man in an army uniform. They were laughing, caught in a moment of pure joy. I turned it over, written in delicate script, Sarah and Robert, summer 1985. I didn't recognize either name. The next photo showed the same woman, visibly pregnant, sitting on a porch swing. The third was of a baby, newborn, red-faced, wrapped in a yellow blanket. My breath caught. The blanket had a distinctive pattern I recognized, tiny ducks marching along the border. I had seen it before, in my own baby pictures. With increasing urgency, I opened the document folder. On top lay a birth certificate, the baby's name, Madeline Sarah Collins. Mother, Sarah Elizabeth Collins. Father, Robert James Foster. But my birth certificate had always listed Elizabeth and Joseph Harrison, my parents, as my mother and father. Beneath it was another document, adoption records finalized in November 1986, just 2 months after my birth. My hand flew to my mouth, stifling a gasp that no one was there to hear. I was adopted. The truth hit me with physical force. I wasn't a Harrison by blood. I wasn't Derek and Vanessa's biological sister. The genetic similarities I'd always attributed to family resemblance, Dad's blue eyes, Mom's heart-shaped face, were coincidences or perhaps what my parents had looked for when they chose me. With shaking hands, I untied the ribbon from the letters. They were arranged chronologically, the first dated March 1986. Dear Elizabeth, I'm not sure how to begin this letter. We've never met, but the adoption agency said you and your husband are considering my baby. They showed me your letter, told me about your struggle to have children, about the 2 you've already adopted and the love in your home. I want you to know I'm not giving up my daughter because she isn't wanted. She is wanted, desperately. But I'm 19, alone since Robert's death in a training accident, and my parents have made it clear they won't help with my mistake. This baby deserves better than what I can provide. The social worker said you can't have more children of your own. I'm so sorry for that pain. Perhaps in some way we can help heal each other's hearts. Sarah, I read through letter after letter, an ongoing correspondence between my biological mother and the woman I'd always known as Mom. Sarah's vulnerability and Elizabeth's compassion flowed through the pages, building a relationship that seemed to transcend their unusual connection. Until I reached a letter dated October 1986, a month after my birth. Elizabeth, I've thought about your offer constantly, and my answer is yes. I want to meet Madeline, to see her, hold her, know that she's thriving in your care. Your kindness in suggesting this means more than I can express. I understand your husband's concerns, but I promise I'm not looking to reclaim her. I just need to see her, to have some memory of her beyond those brief hours in the hospital. Perhaps, as you suggested, occasional updates would be possible. Photos as she grows. With deepest gratitude, Sarah. The next letter was in different handwriting, my mother's, unmistakably. Sarah, I'm writing with a heavy heart to rescind my invitation. Joseph insists that continued contact would only complicate Madeline's life and our family dynamic. He believes a clean break is necessary for all of us to move forward. I fought for what we discussed, but ultimately, this must be a joint decision between my husband and me. Please understand this isn't what I wanted. The adoption is finalized now. Madeline is legally our daughter, and Joseph feels any connection to you threatens that security. I've enclosed the items you left at the hospital for her. The blanket, the small silver locket, as Joseph feels it best that she not have these reminders of a past we don't intend to share with her. I'm truly sorry. I hope someday you can forgive this change of heart. Elizabeth. But Sarah's blanket and locket were here in the box. Mom had kept them, despite what she wrote. And there were more letters, dozens more, spanning years. Sarah writing about her life, her continued education, her hopes that Madeline was happy. Mom responding with carefully worded updates that revealed little but maintained the connection. The final item in the box was a letter from Sarah, dated a month after my mother's sudden death. Joseph. I was deeply saddened to learn of Elizabeth's passing. Though we never met in person, her letters have been a lifeline these past 14 years. Her kindness in sharing glimpses of Madeline's life, against your wishes, as she eventually confessed, showed extraordinary compassion. I've respected your boundaries all these years. I've never attempted contact, never interfered. But with Elizabeth gone, I find myself worrying about Madeline. She's 14 now, navigating adolescence without her mother. I wonder if perhaps the letter ended there, unfinished, unsent. Clipped to it was a newspaper obituary. Sarah Collins, 36, passed away unexpectedly on September 12, 2000, from complications following an automobile accident. Just 2 months after my mother died, my birth mother had also passed away. I sat surrounded by the evidence of a secret history of lives intertwined by love for a child. Me. Dad had kept everything, honored Mom's correspondence in silence, carried the weight of these truths alone for 14 years after both women were gone. Until now. The velvet pouch yielded one final revelation, a delicate silver locket. Inside was a tiny photograph of the young woman from the pictures. Sarah, my birth mother, and a lock of dark hair. My hair, presumably, from when I was born. As dawn broke outside my window, I finally understood. This wasn't just about property or inheritance. Dad had given Derek and Vanessa their biological family legacy, financial security, connections, the foundation their birth parents had built. But I had been given the physical touchstones, the houses, the land, because they were the only roots I had. And he had given me the truth finally because he couldn't bear to leave me without knowing where I came from, who had first loved me, and why I had always felt that inexplicable sense of difference within our family. 2 days later, my siblings returned as requested. They'd arrived bristling with legal threats and barely contained hostility. This better be good, Derek said, dropping heavily into Dad's leather armchair. My lawyer says we have grounds to contest the will based on undue influence. Vanessa hovered near the doorway as if afraid to fully commit to the conversation. I can't stay long. I have a flight at 7. It won't take long, I promised, gesturing to the dining room table where I'd arranged the contents of the cedar box. There's something you need to see. If this is some sentimental trip down memory lane to justify why you deserve. I'm adopted, I interrupted. The words hung in the air, stunning them into silence. What are you talking about? Vanessa finally managed. Dad gave me this before he died. I placed the cedar box on the table. It contains letters between my birth mother and mom, along with my original birth certificate and adoption records. Derek's expression shifted from anger to disbelief. That's impossible. Mom and Dad never said. They never told me either, I said quietly. But it's true. I verified the documents. I was born to a 19-year-old woman named Sarah Collins in September 1986. Her boyfriend, my biological father, died before I was born. Mom and Dad adopted me when I was 2 months old. Vanessa approached the table slowly, picking up one of the photographs with trembling fingers. Why wouldn't they tell us? We were already 8 and 10. We would have remembered if a baby suddenly appeared. According to the letters, they brought me home while you were visiting grandparents during fall break. By the time you returned, they had created a story about Mom being pregnant and delivering while you were away. But Derek shook his head. We would have known. Would you? You were children. You believed what they told you. Vanessa was flipping through the letters now, her earlier hostility replaced by stunned fascination. This is Mom's handwriting. Yes. I sat down, suddenly exhausted. Dad kept everything. He promised Mom he'd destroy it all. But he couldn't. And before he died, he decided I deserved to know the truth. Derek ran a hand through his hair, his anger deflating. So the will. The will was Dad's way of trying to be fair, I explained. You two received your biological family legacy. I received the physical places, the houses, the land, because they're the only roots I have. I paused, swallowing against the tightness in my throat. I'm not genetically connected to the Harrison name or history. That's ridiculous, Vanessa said, looking up from the letters. You're our sister. Am I? The question came out smaller than I intended. These past few days, it hasn't felt that way. Derek studied the birth certificate, then looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. Jesus, Maddie. This is a lot. I know. Why didn't they ever tell you? Vanessa asked. I gestured to the letters. It seems they intended to, originally. But Dad was afraid I'd want to find my birth mother, afraid it would complicate our family. Mom kept in secret contact with Sarah anyway, sending updates, but never told me. And now they're both gone, Derek said quietly. Sarah too. I nodded. All 3 of my parents died without my ever knowing the truth. A heavy silence settled over the room, broken only by the sound of papers being gently sorted and examined. Outside, rain had given way to tentative sunshine, light filtering through Dad's study windows in dusty beams. I don't want to fight over the will, I said finally. That's not why I asked you here. I just thought you deserved to know why Dad made the decisions he did. And I wanted you to know who I am, who I've discovered I am. Derek sat back, his earlier combativeness completely dissolved. The lake house was Mom's favorite place. I know. She used to say it was where she felt most at peace. I smiled faintly. She told me once it was where she fell in love with me, something about the way I laughed when she first dipped my toes in the water. Vanessa wiped at her eyes, suddenly glossy with tears. I remember that day. I was so jealous that you weren't afraid of the water like I was. You were afraid of the water? I asked, surprised. Vanessa had always seemed fearless to me, the confident older sister I could never quite measure up to. Terrified. But you just smiled and splashed. I wanted to be brave like my baby sister. She gave a watery laugh. I still do sometimes. Derek stood, walking to the window. Dad's letter to me makes sense now. He wrote that the truth will explain everything and to trust you. He turned to face me. I'm sorry, Maddie. About what I said before. About all of it. Me too, Vanessa added. We've been distant. That's on us as much as you. I felt something shift inside me, a loosening of the knot that had formed when I first opened the cedar box. I don't know who I am anymore, I admitted. Everything I thought about myself, about our family. You're Madeline Harrison, Derek said firmly. Our sister. Maybe not by blood, but by everything that actually matters. Vanessa nodded, reaching across the table to take my hand. Besides, we've already spent 36 years as siblings. It's a little late to back out now. For the first time in days, I laughed, a real laugh that seemed to chase some of the shadows from the room. We spent the rest of the afternoon going through the box together, piecing together the story of how I came to be part of their family. Old hurts and rivalries didn't magically disappear, but something new emerged alongside them. Understanding, perhaps, or the beginning of it. As evening approached, Derek canceled his flight back to Chicago. Vanessa rescheduled hers for the following day. I was thinking, Derek said hesitantly as we picked at takeout in the kitchen. Surrounded by the remnants of our shared past and newly discovered history, the lake house is big enough for all of us to use. If you're open to it, Maddie. I like that, I said. I think Dad would too. Later, as we sat on the back porch watching fireflies emerge in the twilight, Vanessa asked the question that had been hovering unspoken all day. Do you wish you'd known sooner about being adopted? I considered this, turning the silver locket between my fingers. I wish I'd known my birth mother, I said finally. Sarah. I wish I could have thanked her for the difficult choice she made. But knowing or not knowing wouldn't have changed who raised me, who loved me. I looked at my siblings, still my siblings, despite everything. Who my family is. The cedar box sat open on the table between us. Its secrets finally aired after decades in darkness. Dad had been right. The truth had created a storm, but also the possibility of healing. 3 letters lay beside it, different in content but united in purpose. A father's final attempt to bring his children back together. In the end, it wasn't the houses or money that mattered. It was the understanding that family, whether formed by blood or choice, by birth or adoption, by shared history or shared future, was both more fragile and more resilient than any of us had realized. And sometimes the most important truths are the ones we discover together.